paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted. And I've got such a fun guest. I know, guys, usually I wait at least a year before I start bringing guests back for new stories. But this one here has such wide and varied stories. It's just a blast to talk to her, and you're going to love this. If you didn't see the first time, Sarah Blake is the host of this amazing show on the Signal Network. It's a Hushed Up Historian or Hushed Up Histories, and she is finding these stories that if you're a local, you know it. If you're not, you don't know anything about it. It's, you know, I'm from back in Missouri. There's a little town, Sullivan, which is where I went to high school, had this old mansion that was falling apart. Thank God. And I held a couple of ghost things there with some others so we could try and get some more money into it. Then they got a grant, and now it's being rebuilt. It's used for different things like a venue. But at the time, it was falling apart. It was a big, beautiful mansion, and it would belong to a General Harney. And he was actually the general of the Grand Army of the Republic prior to the Civil War. And he was replaced because he was just a little too violent. Believe it or not, General Harney, when the Mormons tried to succeed from the Union, drove out all the government people from the Salt Lake City area. His plan, when they sent him there with his army to take control, was to kill all the top people, the top 12 of the Mormons in public, and then set up camp in the tabernacle just to prove they couldn't do that in America. Well, he suddenly got sent over to fight Indians, and they replaced him with somebody else. And he had a whole history of that. None of us knew that at the time. We knew it was the Harney Mansion, and it was supposed to be haunted, which it is, and there was a lot of people using it as a hangout for drugs, use drugs there and such. All that's changed. Point is, only the locals knew the history of it. And I wrote about it in one of my books and found the history of General Harney. He was kind of a General Patton during the Civil War. But anyway, that's the kind of stuff Sarah knows. That's the kind of story she looks at. And I'm going to stop yakking here and bring Sarah Blake on to talk about hushed up history.
Hello.
Sarah, it's good to have you back because the last time we talked, it was so much fun.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
You had so much neat stories. About half of them I knew of. I don't know the details. The other half, just a total shock to me. So I got to just mention real quick, folks, if she's got a show on the Signal Network called Hushed Up Histories, right?
Hushed Up History, yep.
And you've got a YouTube channel. That's what I watch. And it's got the same basic stories. Is it the same as the other channel?
Well, right now, all the Hushed Up History videos are under the Signal Network. So that's where you would find them.
Okay, what about your shows on YouTube?
It's all on YouTube. It's all Signal Network under YouTube. Yep.
Okay. So we got that. And then last year you published the book?
I did, yeah.
And that is Hushed Up History, Volume 1. And you know what? I can't wait to read this one. I haven't got it yet, but I'm going to. And I'm sitting there, folks, pressuring her to write the second one. Come on.
I'm on it.
I know. What is your favorite story out of that one?
Okay, so there's there's like two favorite stories, but one of them I can fully 100% say, I don't remember, did we talk about this last time? The story of the Morro Castle?
No, I don't think we did.
That is my favorite story because without that story, and I can say this with 100% certainty, when I learned about the story of the wreck of the Morro Castle outside of Asbury Park, New Jersey,
Yes,
hushed up
we did.
history.
Yes.
Okay,
No, go ahead.
hushed up history would not exist if I had
Okay.
never learned about that story.
Because
I have another story that took place in Salem, Massachusetts, that has absolutely nothing to do with the witch trials, but it was a horrific murder that shocked the city and made headlines all over the country. Yeah. The
This one's
Captain
new.
Joseph White murder.
Okay, well, let's hear about it.
So Captain Joseph White, not a nice guy. People were not a fan of Captain Joseph White, and that included his family. And there was a lot of rumbling around in the family. He didn't have any children, but there were nieces and whatnot. And the husband of a family member decided, you know what, this guy is extremely wealthy. And I know that eventually that wealth will, through his will and whatnot, will eventually get to me, but I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait that long. Let's not. So it's a very long, complicated, detailed story, but in short, he hired two brothers to accelerate that process, and they snuck up through a window into his mansion in Salem, Massachusetts, and they bludgeoned him to death. Snuck back out the window, and it was this sensational trial. They were found very quickly. It was all over headlines all over the country because, you know, Salem, Massachusetts was already notorious. This took place in the mid 1800s.
Okay.
And now it was like something else horrific going on in this city. But it was a sensational trial. They were very quickly convicted. One of the brothers, the Knapp brothers, committed suicide in jail. Another was hung for the crime. Daniel Webster was involved in the trial.
Really?
Yeah. He was involved in the trial. And one of the things that I love about this story, the house, the mansion that it took place in, is right on the main drag through Salem, Massachusetts. But if you didn't know the story, you would never know. You would just walk by this house without a clue that this horrific murder happened in this mansion that shook the legal system all over the country. And you can go see the club that they used in the museum, one of the main museums they have there.
At that house or somewhere else?
In the main museum, the Peabody Essex Museum. That's there in the city. But it's this, you know, you're walking by this beautiful idyllic street of all these beautiful mansions, and you'd have no idea that, like, oh, in that one, some bad stuff happened in there. But, you know, everybody, Salem, Massachusetts, they automatically think of the witch trials, and there's a lot more to that city, but not all of it is there's a lot of great, there is, but there's a whole lot of blood and crime up in there too.
Okay, so that was in your book.
Yes, that is in the Hushed Up History Volume 1. Yep.
Volume 1. All right. So what did Daniel Webster, the great politician, have to do with these atrocious murder?
He was in the courtroom. And part of the problem here was this was one of the first cases where they were like, well, these two people that hired these brothers to commit this murder, were they guilty? They weren't in the house, but they orchestrated it. They hired them. So this was the big question, is can somebody be guilty of murder if they weren't actually the hand that caused it? And Daniel Webster convinced everybody, yes, they are. They are just as guilty. So that was one of the first cases in the country that kind of set that precedent.
Was he the attorney for the state then, or was he just jumping in because he wanted to talk?
I can't remember if he was for the state at that point. I'm not 100% sure.
Because I've read the Devil and Daniel Webster. I've seen the one from 1950 or whatever. Just loved his history. I've read some of his speeches. He was quite an eloquent speaker at the time. Yes,
brilliant man, and he changed the legal system with this court case.
Okay, so that was Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
that was your favorite story from that book. Do you have a story in particular that you just got to put into the second one?
Oh, there's so many. That's part of my problem is I keep finding stuff.
And how do you do this? I mean, this got to take days, if not years, of your life to do all this.
You know, I'm always looking. I'm always looking for bizarre stories. I'm always like, my phone is full of screenshots of like these little like infographics you'll see or little headlines and the notes section of my phone, forget it. It's just, and thankfully, thank God, most of it makes sense, but I'm not going to lie. There are some that I will look back on. It'll just be like statue in Philadelphia, 1840 murder. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm going to have to go back and try to retrace my steps. But I'm always looking for these things. And I'm one of these people that every town that I go to, if I'm always talking to local tour guides or looking up the local museums or things like that. So I'm always gathering stories. So I mean, I love doing it. So it's always fun.
I was talking earlier about General Arnie. That may be one worth your checking him out, because that man was, I'm going to say, borderline insane.
Yeah, I've never heard that, so now I'm going to have to look about him.
He went down to fight in the Mexican War.
Okay.
And there was a bunch of Irishmen who went down there, married into the Mexican people and had families, and they were leading one of the fights against the United States.
Mm-hmm.
When he won the battles, he got the Irish together. One of them actually had both legs amputated. And it was like, keep him alive until tomorrow. And they hung him the next day. He was determined to hang everybody who participated in this.
Oh my God. So he was a certain way.
That's why I said he reminds me of Patton, because when Patton was down there with Pancho Villa, he killed two of those men, strapped them to the fenders of his car, and drove through the towns hoping Pancho Villa would come to get revenge and he could fight him.
Oh my God.
So these two guys were very, very similar.
Yeah. That's wild.
Makes you want to believe in reincarnation, doesn't it?
Right? Mm-hmm. See what happened there. I don't know.
Okay. So we talked earlier, you had some stories about wild men in Ohio.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking Bigfoot or dogmen. We're talking something else here, right?
Well, I mean, we don't really know.
Okay.
Really. Well, I love the story that you told just before, because one of the more recent things that I wrote about that is being published is a story about a crazy haunted mansion in California that wasn't very well known outside of the locals, like you were talking about. That happened in Oakland, California, and I don't know how much you'd want to get into that. But you also talked about this crazy Civil War guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
And pre-Civil War, but one of the other things that I keep running into over and over and over again in this weird coincidental type of way. The story that I have coming up on Signal Network next, not this week. This week I'm actually doing a live stream with my friend Scott Davis talking about haunted colleges.
Does he go by a nickname like the Warlock or something?
Not that I know of, but he does now, as far as I'm concerned.
I thought I saw his name on one of your pages somewhere with that, but maybe
he's
not.
Scotty the Medium, Scotty the MJ Medium.
Okay.
But I'm calling him that from now on, just so you know. Perfect. That's how I'm going to introduce him on Thursday. He's going to just, what? The week after that, I'm doing a story of the Bennington Triangle in Vermont.
Okay, we
Are you
talked a little
familiar?
bit about that. Yes, you mentioned it last time a little bit.
Yeah, and so I decided, well, this is bizarre enough. I'm going to finally put this to video, so that'll be in 2 weeks. But as I was digging into it, I learned about so the Bennington Triangle, Glastonbury Mountain region of Vermont, very remote, and there was a string of disappearances in the 50s. And by
Okay.
disappearances, I mean these people just vanished. They walked into the woods and they just disappeared. And, that sounds like something that would be completely plausible in the thick forest.
Sure.
Somebody wanders off. But these were people that were like very experienced outdoorsmen. These were people that lived there. These were people that were extremely familiar with their surroundings. But there was another man who disappeared off of a bus in the region. Got on the bus, people saw him get on the bus, and just gone. His suitcase and everything was still there, but he was gone. But I learned that before this string of disappearances happened in the 50s, there was a man a little more than a decade earlier in the 1940s, went out into the woods, again, very experienced outdoorsman, hunter, very familiar with these woods, and went out to the woods with his cousin. They were hunting, and they lost track of each other. Initially, not something to worry about. It happens. But the
Mhm.
cousin couldn't find him. And it took long enough so that he could not find this man that he went to the authorities. Look, I lost my cousin out in the woods. I need help to find him.
Mhm.
Days later, this man was found. His name was Carl Herrick. They found him in the woods, laying, from what I've read in the little newspaper clippings, he was laying flat on his back next to his gun, and his gun had not been fired. And they're like, what happened to Carl? They did a medical examination, and they found that his lung had been punctured, and they determined that he had been squeezed to death. Now, this area of the Glastonbury Mountains had been spoken about in a less than great way for centuries. The Abenaki people who lived in the region referred to this area as a cursed area. They spoke of, carnivorous rocks that would swallow people whole, but they also spoke about the wild men in the woods. So when you
Okay.
hear about Carl Herrick, who was found just laying next to his gun that was not fired, squeezed to death, kind of brings it back as to what could have happened to this man. Now, in the
Mhm.
newspaper articles, now again, I'm not super familiar with. I'm not super outdoorsy. I'm not gonna
Okay.
go running around. I mean, I love the woods, but I'm not gonna, I'm not super confident enough to say what may or may not have killed this man. But in the newspaper articles, what they stated was that what happened was that he was hugged to death by a bear.
And
I don't
yet,
know.
not eaten.
See, that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
Yeah.
like again, not super well. I'm not an outdoorsman, but I would tend to think if someone was attacked by a bear, I wouldn't think the bear would just come up behind, hug someone,
Mhm.
squeeze them to death, and be on their merry way. But that is what they decided is what killed this man, was that he was.
All bears but one can retract their claws, but when they're attacking, you'd think there'd be claw marks all over him.
Exactly. That was my thought. I'm like, so there was no marks on this guy. He was just found laying on the ground next to his gun. And I would think, I don't know, I would think, again, I don't know, I would think he would shoot the gun. He would do something.
Yeah.
But from the
And
description, he was just found laying next to his gun with
don't
a
most of
lung
the
puncture,
people
squeezed
don't
to death.
most of the people out there in the woods have a knife? You'd think he would get to the knife and try to
Do
free himself.
something.
Yeah.
Instead of
If
just,
nothing else,
let this
Bear, you're
bear
gonna remember this
hug me.
fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was one of the first instances where I kept running into these stories of the wild men in the woods. Then
Okay.
I kept digging a little more, and I kept finding it's going to be a story in the next couple of weeks about these wild men and these hairy humanoid creatures being found in like Civil War era by Civil
Okay.
War soldiers.
Okay.
So,
Spoiler alert, you're giving us a story that you haven't even put out on your show yet.
haven't even put out yet. Just
All
started to
right.
dig into it. It'll be out at some point, but I love it.
Friends,
So I'm
y'all need to listen to this, okay?
so I was digging around and I found these two accounts. One from a Confederate Captain George Anderson's company down in, now I heard two different variations. I heard one was in Alabama and one was in Tennessee. And it was a newspaper article that was printed in 1893 in a Pittsburgh newspaper saying that someone who was involved in this company retold the story. And the story they told was that over the course of a couple of days, people from the company kept disappearing. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. Then one night, they started to hear a struggle. And they noticed that things were missing, things were breaking, and there was just something very unusual going on that wasn't something that could be attributed to another army or an animal that they were aware of. Then they ran into, and this is how they described him, a 6 foot tall, 250-pound wild man covered in hair. And according to this account, it took 10 men to subdue this wild man. And they trapped this man. They tried to question him, but he couldn't speak. It was just sounds. There was no words.
Mm-hmm.
This wild man escaped, darted out into the mountains. They followed him. And when this wild man noticed that he was being followed, he chose to toss himself over the edge of a mountain and he died. They found a cave where they then suspected that this wild man was living, and that is where they found these people that had been missing from the company. And that they had described, again, this over 6 foot tall, 250-pound wild man that had captured them and brought them back to this cave. And this is from the 1890s. And it's an account from people who said that this happened around, like, during the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And I was completely fascinated by this Civil War Bigfoot story. Because, I mean, Bigfoot, you always think of the more modern rendition of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is not something that I would initially think, oh, they've been around during the 1800s. But here was this story out of a newspaper in the 1890s of someone telling this tale about encountering a wild man while they were fighting for the Civil War.
So all these men were in the cave alive?
Alive.
And none of them thought about running away when the guy hadn't showed up. From what I understand,
they were like tied. They were bound.
Oh,
they couldn't. They couldn't. Yeah.
So
now it goes on to talk about how when they were speaking again, we talk about how the locals have the information that it was believed to have been a man named Bill Patton, who was a Unionist, who was captured. And in trying to escape capture, he was struck on the head with a sword. And the head injury resulted in how they refer to it as madness, and that he ran off into the woods and he was never seen again. So they suspect that this wild man was this Patton.
And he had wild hair growing all over his body in the time period of 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think we can eliminate Dogman, but I think the Bigfoot's the better choice here.
Yeah, and now there was another one that I ran into that wasn't Civil War specific, but this one was told by Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay, I've heard of it, but I've never heard the actual story. I just know he said he saw one. Right.
Well, the account that I read was that he didn't personally experience this, but this was a story that he was told by an outdoorsman and hunter, and he wrote about it in his book, The Wilderness Hunter. And this account was someone that was telling Roosevelt about a gruesome attack that had happened to people that he was out hunting with, that he walked away from the campsite, the classic walked away from the campsite, heard a ruckus, came back, saw this man that he was with being brutally attacked, and that he was killed by what would be described as another wild man of the woods that escaped out into the forest. So again, you have these stories like Teddy Roosevelt talking about how he was told about a wild man in the woods. These Bigfoot-esque humanoid figures, but from the Civil War era. So I was fascinated by this idea of we have these accounts of Bigfoot humanoid creatures from an era that at least I never initially put them as being
right.
in. Yeah.
Let me throw this one out at you, just out of your opinion.
Yeah.
Back going from about 1900 through the 1930s and 40s, giant human skeletons were found all over the country.
Yes.
Could this be one of the giants? Some people say they were Nephilim from the Bible. I have no idea. But what do you think?
I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with a giant skeleton that you're fighting, and it's more than one.
Yeah.
So, how do you explain this? You know, it's one thing if, you know, you just found one skeleton that happened to be extremely tall. You can attribute that to, you know, just somebody that just somehow, even though people were of much shorter stature there, they had the right genetic mix and that they just happened to be very tall. But then you have another one, and then you have another one, and then you have another one. So at what point does this stop being just a tall person? You know?
Throw this one out at you while we're talking on this topic. Actually, let me stop here because we're way over on the commercial break. See, this is why I wanted you back. We could get to talking and all that. Sarah, wait just a second. I'll be right back, okay?
Sure.
I love having Sarah on here because we can get to talking, and I have to make notes now to remember what I wanted to bring up. But what I want to bring up to you folks is this little thing right here, and when we're done, we will be right back. How about
the new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com. The truth, it's out there, and it's waiting for you. The Unexplained Network is your source for the best in paranormal programming, live video streaming, and audio streaming from hauntings, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptids, and the ever-expanding realm of the unexplained. Listen live or on demand now on Spreaker, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeart, and Pockets all over the World Wide Web. The Unexplained Network, where unexplained lives.
So the Unex Network, and I used to call it Unex, but it's actually now the Unexplained Network as we went back to our original name. Irrelevant. It's still around. It is getting bigger all the time. We're getting bigger and bigger guests. Why I'm still on here, I have no idea. But I'm still here, and I'm still writing for the magazine. And you can become a member really, really easy. It's just a matter of going to the website, which is still unexnetwork.com, and go down a little bit on the first page. There's some stuff there to fill out. To become a member, you get access to the blog. And guys, the blog is just going nuts lately, as you can imagine, with all these scientists in the zero-point energy field, scientists in the UFO field, scientists in space exploration field, nuclear energy field, just disappearing, man. They're just walking out of their house without their wallets, without their phones, without their watches, just disappearing. How is this happening? I think we're up to like 11 now. There's also a lot of stuff on the blog. We were one of the first to discuss the Tic Tacs when they came out a year or so ago. So there's a lot of good stuff on there. There's also the newsletter. You get that free. And it talks about what shows are on, what we're doing, and whatever's new in the news. I was looking at one today, and right off my head, I can't remember what the story was, but Stephen Greer. The main story was Stephen Greer talking about the government using really weird weapons to try and get people to stop talking about what they don't want to hear. And I don't think I mean the Democrats and the Republicans. I'm talking about the people behind them who's really secret. And of course, there's also the magazine. And that's what I really like to talk about because that's where I do my best writing, other than my books, of course. But I got some great articles. The one on the left here had two articles of mine, one on the haunted battleship North Carolina, and the other was about legends of Halloween. And when I'm talking legends, guys, I'm not talking the Headless Horseman or Salem, Massachusetts. I'm talking about when I was a kid, they thought that on Halloween, a cult was running around trying to kidnap blonde-haired, blue-eyed children. You guys my age and younger remember taking the candy to the hospital to get it x-rayed because they thought there might be razor blades in the apples or something like that. Yeah, all that had a nugget of truth somewhere, and that's what I talked about in that article. This one I talked about haunted dolls, which was a job for me because I hate dolls. And this one here, of course, had The Last Call at the Devil's Diner, which was a very haunted restaurant on Route 66 that I got to investigate many times. And of course, the tornado came a little over a year ago and destroyed it. So I won't be going back. It was my last story of them. Hey, also want to talk about to Sarah about some of the stuff. I know she's been doing some ghost hunting lately. Anyway, getting back to the magazine, guys, last issue that came out, I had a lengthy article on 10 scientists or something who had disappeared or died under really mysterious circumstances. You know, we got a guy here who's got a engine that runs on like 1 gallon of gas from Florida to Washington, D.C. or something. And as he's trying to sell it, he jumps up, runs out, says, I've been poisoned. He's bleeding out the nose and dies. And nobody can ever find out why. A guy about to go on stage and talk about disclosure, takes a drink of soda, stands up, bleeds out of his nose, falls over dead. They saw someone walk over, get the can, and walk out to a car and drive away. That kind of stuff was going on. And then this month, there was like 4 more of them disappeared or something. So I wrote another article on it. Again, a lot of stuff going on. This is the way you need to keep up on it. Join the Onyx Network. And now let's get back with Sarah because we got to talk about some of this stuff. So what I was getting at is in Steelville, Missouri in the 1920s, which I did not know about this till I moved to North Carolina. And I used to go down there. It was the county seat of one of the places I worked. This kid found this 8-foot tall skeleton buried in a cave with all kinds of adornments like it was a king or something. He took it into town. The doctor put it in his waiting room so people could look at it for weeks. People were coming from all around the country to see this thing. The Smithsonian Institute asked to borrow it, according to the newspaper accounts at the time, to study it. They shipped it up, put it on a train, sent it up there, and then they said, we don't know what you're talking about. We did not ask for it. We never got it. We don't know what you're talking about. I
was going to say, did it get lost?
It got lost. You're right.
Skeleton? Okay.
And I'm sure you've heard that story before about the Smithsonian.
I have. And I mean, it's funny, museums. You'll hear these stories that come out like that museums found something in their storage. And it's like, how did you lose that? I work in museums. It is none of it shocks me anymore, but that's different.
Yeah.
That's very different. Being, we would like to see this, we'd like to study it. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's I don't believe that we lost it there at all.
And
Yeah.
I've seen that on others where giant human skeletons were sent to the Smithsonian, and suddenly it's like we don't know what you're talking about.
Oh,
I think the
I
new
don't
one now
know.
is a bunch of the stuff you're talking about is in a specially built place. Unfortunately, it was built with asbestos, so we can't go in there now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it kills me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's this like, oh, we don't know where it is. We lost an 8-foot skeleton that just happened to be have a lot of scrutiny under it right now. We just lost it.
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
in paperwork. What can you do with the paperwork?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we were talking about skeletons and all that. Do you have any stories related to the giants or any of those?
I don't. It's on my list. It is on my list to write about. It is the giants and what you had just talked about with the Smithsonian and how
Yeah.
these. And I'm trying to find more instances of these things that are found and then just disappear
Yeah.
conveniently because it happens. It happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully I'll be able to dig into that more and more and more.
There's a country, and I will get you the information. I got it from a friend of mine who's really into that and lectures on it. I want to say it was Tartaria or something to that effect.
Okay.
It was over in somewhere around where the Russian Empire was.
Okay.
And they had technology way above everyone else. And at some point, it dropped off the maps. And there you can find discussions about it, facts about it, stories about it, about the people in magazines from the 1800s, but you can't find anything since about 1800.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I would love to hear more about that.
Which blends right in with the rest of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These things just conveniently disappearing. Like, like we said about the skeletons, like how many times can this thing happen that we can keep saying the same excuse for it? Oh, it's another big skeleton. It's another big skeleton. Another big skeleton. How many times can we? Oh, well, this just disappeared. This just got lost. This just disappeared. There's a point.
Son of a gun! It got up and walked away. I don't.
There's a point where you have to start questioning these things, and I noticed with all of these sightings now, these Bigfoot sightings that were happening in Ohio. One of the things that I was reading was, these people that are immediately dismissive, and they're just like, going back to the man in Glastonbury Mountain regions, like it's a bear. You're just mistaking these things for bears. How many times are you going to mistake it for a bear? Like, we know what a bear is.
Mm-hmm.
People know what bears look like. It's one thing. It's just, how many times are you going to see these creatures in these sightings that people are talking about? These 6 to 10 foot tall creatures that they're, and some of them, there was one that happened where it was I believe a mother and their child that was within a couple feet of one that was over 6 feet, not the full 9 to 10 feet, but about 6.5 feet. How many times are you going to say it's a bear? But that also, the one account that was the smaller stature one, now there was the question of, was there more than one? There's more than one giant skeleton.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't there be more than one of these creatures living in these parts of the country? It wouldn't shock me.
We talked about the shipwreck story that you really got you into this.
Yes.
The ships at sea, sailors, they had all kinds of neat stories and disappearances
of
and
creatures. And I just was reading the other day about the ship, the Monongahela, who it was off of, I want to say it was Papua New Guinea. I could be wrong on that, though. How they had written back to a town in Massachusetts saying how they had encountered this insane, we were just talking about things disappearing. They had encountered this insanely large sea creature, and it was this vicious battle, but they got him. They speared him into the ribs, and they got this creature. But he was so massive, they had to dismember him, and they had parts of him on the ship. But then the ship disappeared. And then the ship wrecked, and there were parts of the ship washing up on shore. And there's a historical society or a museum in Massachusetts that has the sign that says Monongahela, so they know it was from the ship.
Okay.
But now we'll never know what that creature was, because it too disappeared with the ship.
I really can't blame the Smithsonian for this one.
I mean, it's the Smithsonian, but I mean, it's so many things and so many places that just we'll never know. These stories of these things disappearing.
Was it World War I that a German U-boat surfaced? They apparently had been fighting a giant sea monster, and they surrendered to the British. Did you hear that one?
No, but now I'm going to look into it, because I wanted to write something about lesser known sea monsters. So when I read the Monongahela thing, I'm like, oh, that's perfect. But that fits right in there too.
I wonder if this fits into one or the other. But yeah, apparently these sailors come up, surrendered. The ship was in bad shape, and they all told the captain, even put a log about this thing that they were trying to fight off their ship.
Really? That's fascinating. So when you hear these things, these sea monsters and Bigfoot, what do you think? Do you think these are remnants of these like extinct species? Or do you think these are entirely new, completely, maybe even not from here, not of this earth?
Yes. My first thoughts used to be that Bigfoot was just a creature that was really smart about hiding.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
But now, after being in the show and talking to so many incredible people like you, what I'm seeing, and I'm taking the Marley Woods incidents, the Skinwalker Ranch, and all of this, where there is a lot of UFO sightings, you get poltergeist activity. A Mothman, they had Men in Black, they had poltergeist activity, they had strange lights in the sky. These places I'm beginning to think they're all connected.
Yeah, that's one of the things I looked up. I'm like, what are the top 10 states of Bigfoot sightings, and what are the top 10 states of UFO sightings? And there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
That overlap.
Do you think this Bigfoot could be a creature that has, as a survival mode, can move out of dimensions?
That was another thing I was going to bring up to you. I recently, a friend of mine was having the conversation with me about like portals and time slips. And can these creatures, the reason we haven't been able to actually have any really good interaction or photo, because they have this ability to just poof out into thin air through one of these dimensions or these portals. I mean, hey, we haven't been able to figure it out. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. We don't know how these things operate. And I mean, we're finding out more and more. 100 years ago, if somebody described what we're doing right now 100 years ago, talking in different states over these little computers that fit in our pockets, it would have been like, that's insane. That is not humanly possible. How do we know what's possible? Can we? I mean, you're already talking about these large creatures that we now know have accounts going back centuries. How do we know? How can we definitively say, yes, this is a fact about them or not?
Right.
So, I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all if in centuries from now, hopefully not that long, but if at some point, there's more of this study done and there's more of this real information poured into this idea of portals and time slips. And I mean, we're already talking about that in terms of humans, time travel and that. So if it works for us, why couldn't it work for them? Who knows?
I'm sure you've looked into time slips. Do you have stories in your book about that?
I don't have one in my book. I have one that was it was submitted for a volume of another book series that I was submitting things to. The Morbly Jourdain incident in France. These two women. Yeah, okay. I love that story. I absolutely love that story that these women were in France and they were walking through the palaces, and then just like that, all of a sudden, everything shifted. They were seeing people in 1400s, 1500s clothing. I think they described it, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I wrote that, but they described how it wasn't just something like clothing that changed. but it was the entire atmosphere. The air changed. Everything around them changed. It felt like their entire surroundings were different. So it wasn't just something that was visual, it was everything. And I mean, that is one of my absolute, I love stories I love time slip stories. I love this notion that we have these holes in our existence that things just kind of come in and out of sometimes. I'm fascinated by those. I absolutely love those stories.
Now, did you see the one that happened in Europe, in England, I should say?
No, tell me everything.
Two couples on a trip. I want to say they were going to France or they were going somewhere else, but they got off the road on a little trail, found a nice hotel, went in, got a room, come back in the morning. They liked the place because it was so old fashioned. And yeah, they got the bill, and the bill was just incredibly cheap for them. And they couldn't understand why it was so inexpensive. They went in to have some breakfast. The bill there was very, very cheap. And then they went out and hailed a police officer to ask, how do we get back to the main highway, whatever it was called. He didn't know what they were talking about. But they finally found their way back and said, we got to stop there on the way back home because it was such a neat place. On the way back home, all they found was an old foundation.
I love it.
And yeah, that was written up in the same story.
I love it.
And there was the guys in Germany, and I want to say it was in the 1930s. They photographed Dresden, the city of Dresden.
Mm-hmm.
And the photos are available. You can find them. And when they had them developed, the city was on fire with smoke everywhere and flames. Of course, we know Dresden was firebombed in 1944-45 by the Americans. But they said this was not what we took. But later on, they recognized Dresden on fire when it was, 15 years later or whatever.
Oh, that's wild that there's actual physical evidence of that. It's more than just the story that somebody's like, no, listen, please believe me. If there's
you got plenty to talk about in the next book now.
I'll writing it all down. Got it.
All right, one more good story for us. What do you think? Cryptids? Aliens? Weird stuff? What do you got?
I mean, there's so much. Cryptids, aliens, weird stuff. I mean, I could talk a little bit about the crazy haunted mansion that I kind of referenced earlier.
Go right ahead.
So Oakland, California. Another one of these things where, it wasn't very well known, and I just kind of accidentally stumbled on it. So there was a man in Oakland, California, and his name was, well, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So this man, he worked for the U.S. Treasury Department. He was this very well-known, very highly respected Thomas Bromwell Clark. And he wanted to have this mansion in Oakland, California. And at the time, Oakland, California, this happened in 1874. So Oakland at the time had really become this industrialized place. It had really been this up-and-coming city, and he decided he wanted to have this mansion in Oakland, California. Found this mansion in Oakland. I'm sorry, he didn't build it. Found this mansion in Oakland, California, and he moved in with his wife, his children, and a bunch of friends. And over the course of 3 nights, it started April 24th, 1874. They all go to bed. Nothing unusual, normal day. Then after midnight, their doorbell starts going. They start getting bangs on the door, but there's nobody there. This set off 3 days of chaos for these people. And what I loved about this story was that it was very heavily documented in the San Francisco Chronicle. So we have multiple articles telling of what happened to these people. So that first night, they're like, there's all this noise, there's all this madness going on, what's happening? They try to go downstairs. And this was so much more. This is another thing that caught my attention about it. It was so much more than just, we heard some knocking, we heard some footsteps. According to their account, they went down the stairs, and in the parlor of this mansion, furniture was actually being tossed around the room. Couches, chairs spinning on their legs, pianos where the keys were being slammed. So this was a very intense haunting that was going on. And another thing I love about this is, according to them, they went downstairs, they saw this and went, no, no, and they just went back upstairs. They're like, we're gonna let this just kind of tire itself out, like it's a toddler. Just let it wear itself out. But over the course of the next 2 nights, it got more and more intense. Every night, furniture being thrown down steps, things breaking, like very intense hauntings going on in this house. And on the 3rd night, they all remember hearing a very loud scream and seeing a bright white light. And then it just stopped. Now, at this point, it had become kind of well known, again, to the locals, what was going on. And there were hundreds of people coming to this mansion to see what was going on. And after this had happened, this scream and this bright light, they brought in a psychic medium. They were going to have a big public event because Thomas Clark, at this point was like, I'm done. I'm out. He had said to the San Francisco Chronicle reporter, he's like, you can do whatever you want. I'm leaving. We're out. You want to sit here, you want to hang out with this, feel free. That night, nothing happened. And nothing ever happened again. So it was just these 3 days of absolute chaos that happened in this mansion. And it turned Thomas Clark's opinion, because before this, he was this was a big part of, this was the age of spiritualism.
Sure.
And he was very adamant, again, worked for the Treasury Department, very well respected, highfalutin. He was very much against everything with spiritualism. This changed his mind. He was now very much, this house is haunted, and I want somebody to prove it. So he hired a group of paranormal investigators. Again, something else that we equate to today, happening in an age where we may not have thought about it. He had this team of academics go in and do this very thorough study of his house. But they came back and they said, your house isn't haunted. And he was very unhappy about this. He went out publicly denouncing these people, tearing them down, and him and his daughter spent the rest of their lives saying how these investigators were wrong, this house is haunted, they don't know what they're talking about. And I love this story. And he went out, he wrote a pamphlet about it that's called The Oakland Ghost. And there's a copy of it now at a museum in Oakland, California. The mansion was torn down. They went the rest of their lives saying how, no, this place was haunted. These academics have no idea what they were talking about. And it's become one of these great local stories to Oakland, California, of this haunted mansion, this idea that you hear about, but here was an actual real deal haunted mansion, similar to the one that you were talking about right in the beginning, these haunted mansions.
Wow.
Yeah.
There is so much more you and I could talk about. We're running out of time.
We could go on and on for days. I'd love it.
We're going to have to, because there's so much more. I got like, oh, have you heard this one? Every time you speak, I'm like, what about this one? So, all right. Well, Sarah, you have one book out, which is Hushed Up History, Volume 1.
Volume 1.
And how many stories would you guess was in there like this?
How many are in the first one? There's 34 in the first one. The second one is about halfway done, and I'm looking to do about 44, 45 for that one. Yeah. And
you think that'll be done next June, maybe a little earlier?
I would love it to be done earlier. I'm trying my hardest. As soon as I can get it out, I want it to be out. I would love for it to be out this fall. I don't know if it'll happen. But my hard deadline is the absolute latest. I want it out by next summer. But I am definitely going to try for earlier.
Well, be sure and get hold of me if I haven't gotten you back on here, because this is the kind of show I love. There's no trying to drag things out of you.
Oh, no. I love these conversations. I love that I can come on here and we can just have these discussions about all of these stories. And it just shows that these stories are endless. There's so many stories to tell. Look at the conversation we just had today. We went from haunted mansions in California to Civil War cryptids to sea serpents. Like, it's all over the map, but it's all under this just awesome umbrella, and I love discussing it.
All right. Well, I like having you on here because you are such a great guest. We have so much fun
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
And your show, Hushed Up History on
Signal Network on
which
YouTube.
is available on YouTube. It's free, I assume.
Yes, absolutely. My program, Hushed Up History, is on every Thursday night. The edited, put together videos they premiere at 7 o'clock. If we're doing a live broadcast, like I am this upcoming week, those are typically 9 o'clock. This upcoming Thursday will be myself and Scott Davis discussing haunted colleges.
The Warlock.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. I'm sorry. Myself and the Warlock. We're going to be discussing haunted colleges.
Haunted colleges. Missouri State University and Columbia should be on there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hang loose. I'll be right back with you as soon as I say goodbye to the good folks. We'll talk a little bit more, okay?
Sure.
All right. Thanks again, Sarah. Talk to you in a little bit. Now, this is the kind of show I love because we could just, I didn't even notice the time. And suddenly it's like, oh, I'm like late for the commercial because it was such a great conversation. So much fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you had a lot of fun listening to us. And I do want to hit you real quick on, again, joining the UNX Network. Just pop on to Unexplained Network. Join up to the UNX Network on unxnetwork.com and drop down a little bit. And there's so much you can get out of this. And again, we've got some great writers. The show is always free. My show is on Monday nights, but the show is shows of all these other folks. Iron City Paranormal, Michelle Roos. Those are the ghost folks like me. There's UFOs, cryptids, all of this. It's on. We've got Bishop Long talking about demonology and some of his exorcisms. So check it out. Pop on to the UNX Network. Look for the shows. There's a heading there for current shows. It'll show you all of that. It's all on YouTube. And you guys need to check it all out. Thanks again to my guest, Sarah. She's such a sweetheart for coming on and just yakking about the paranormal. I have so much fun with that. And I want you guys, of course, the most important thing I can ever ask you to do, aside from staying safe, is to stay spooked. Good night.